Welcome to this wonderful session. I'm really excited about this session because those of you who didn't know, I'm originally from Philadelphia, born and bred. I have to read a few administrative notes before I get into the background that I'm going to give. So this session, called Preserving the Philadelphia Sound, Forward-Thinking Engagement Through DAM to Ensure a Tailored and Customized DAM System, features me, myself, and Roberta, who is the woman who was hired to essentially get this DAM system going, as well as a streaming service and a whole bunch of other things that she's going to be talking about. And there's a few other things. If you are thinking that you're somewhere else, track 1 or track 3, this is track 2, but you know, if I talk about the other sessions, then you might leave, and we don't want you to do that. So we hope you're going to stay and enjoy this awesome session. So I'm going to talk at first just a little bit about this idea of the Philadelphia sound. And for those of you who aren't from Philadelphia, or maybe haven't necessarily experienced Philadelphia, we often talk about the Philadelphia sound, not even just in terms of classical music, but we also talk about it in terms of our history that we have with soul music and so many different American forms of music that sort of grew up and thrived in Philadelphia. And in particular, when I was a child, my mother was a great fan and a patron of the Philadelphia Orchestra. So when I was young, she would take me to these concerts. And of course, when you're a young girl or teenager, you don't think of going to classical music concerts, right? But I learned to love the orchestra, and I learned to love the classical music that was played by the Philadelphia Orchestra. And if you have my book, I actually mention in the foreword of my book that this was one of my first really childhood media experiences and live music experiences, was going to the Philadelphia Orchestra. So I have a quick video to share that just talks about what the Philadelphia sound is all about, and then we'll hand it over to Roberta for her presentation. So I'm just going to share my screen one more time so you can all see that video.
One of the best characteristics of this orchestra is obviously his warm and rich sound. And of course, it's world famous for its very deep string sound. And indeed, I'm always amazed that they play full bow, and when they're at the end of the bow, the strings, you feel they just don't let it go. They just sustain until the next bow, and it just gives an incredible legato and a singing quality, all with this very rich, silky tone. So this is actually always impressive. It always amazes me. But at the same time, you have all those soloists everywhere. It's actually really an ensemble of soloists, and yet a feeling that they can really produce an incredible homogeneous sound together. But every member of the orchestra has its own talent, its own characteristic flavor and sound world, and for me this is really unique.
And I agree, it's really unique. Having traveled much of the world and gone to see many great symphonies, I think that the Philadelphia Orchestra has a depth and a richness of sound. It's what made me really love the cello, which is my absolute favorite instrument. And I'm not sure where that sound is coming from. Goodness, I guess that's from the YouTube. I apologize. We'll close that one down. Sorry. There we go. And so with that, before something else starts playing, I'm going to hand it over to Roberta, who's going to introduce herself. I had the pleasure of working with the Philadelphia Orchestra, which is why I started the session and kicked off the session. After many years of wanting to work with them, they secured a budget, I guess it was about 5 years ago now, to procure a DAM system, to procure a streaming service. And I was very fortunate to work with the orchestra after all these years of being a fan, to help them procure the systems and to help them set it up. And then I helped hire Roberta, who has taken it over. So Roberta, over to you to tell the story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Theresa. And good afternoon, everyone. As Theresa mentioned, I'm Roberta Gorin-Paracka, Digital Asset Manager at the Philadelphia Orchestra. And today I'll be sharing a little bit about our DAM journey, where we started and what it took to get us where we are now. So Theresa has provided some context for the decision-making process that led us to the adoption of a DAM solution, and I'm happy to pick up where she left off. I have a few slides that I'll share, but first I'll give a little background. As a performing arts organization about to head into our 122nd season, the Philadelphia Orchestra has a rich legacy of recording and broadcasting. This legacy became even more crucial during the pandemic as we had to pivot to become a digital media organization. Before we were able to safely convene our orchestra musicians in person for what would become our digital stage offerings, we were really relying on our archival assets to continue to provide patrons and audiences with that orchestral experience of the Philadelphia sound that Stefan Deneve described so beautifully. I'm going to share my screen. So our earliest plans for our DAM centered audio and video, by far our largest categories of content, as well as photography, marketing, and promotional assets. And with so many types of assets, all with their own permissions, use cases, and needs, and one lone arranger, it was clear that I'd need to take a measured approach toward asset ingestion and system rollout. Excuse me. Implementing a new system is always a challenge, and doing it remotely amplifies those challenges and uncovers new ones. The steps that I've outlined here are the ones I planned out for myself while envisioning the roadmap of our DAM rollout. When I came on board, teams had already been dealing with the new normal of remote work for about 3 months, which was extremely helpful for identifying pain points during my initial assessment. Especially for organizations that are adopting a first-time DAM system as we were, identifying where your assets are, who owns them, and what kind of metadata, if any, you have to work with is a huge first step. In our situation, we had a mixed bag of ad hoc servers, local storage, innumerable hard drives, multiple Dropboxes, no standardized naming conventions, and a single source of truth seemed to be a pipe dream. Work with your stakeholders to uncover what their dream scenarios are and draw from those conversations to flesh out your roadmap while providing realistic benchmarks. In our case, we have several phases of how our DAM will meet these expectations down the line, with the acknowledgement that DAM is a process, not a project. I say all of this with the caveat that these things take time, and time is a luxury that many DAM managers don't have. There are mandates to have a working DAM 3 to 6 months from purchase, for instance. And at the very minimum, having conversations that are centered around lofty goals for the future help you figure out how and if you're going to be able to reach these benchmarks with your approach. To the next point, identify and remedy pain points. This has everything to do with figuring out your workflows, speaking with future DAM users, and finding out how they operate. This research begins when you're in your initial planning stage. As we've seen over the past year, workflows can and do change due to extenuating circumstances. When adopting a new system, there will be a fair amount of change management, but a first-time DAM should really be aligned with what the workflows have been like in order to meet those users' needs. For us, a large part of that was developing naming conventions and asset delivery guidelines. Documentation of these standards distributed among teams and to external partners serves the entire organization in the short term and the long term. And that leads to the last point, communication. I've been attending Henry Stewart conferences and webinars for a couple of years now, and the importance of governance has not been lost on me. Governance is crucial, and assembling a governance committee provides a space to bounce ideas around, get important feedback and wish list items from your stakeholders, and disseminate information and standards that team leaders bring back to their staff. It's another outlet in that ever important feedback loop that DAM managers need to tune into. Change management for a first-time DAM is all about empowering your users to embrace a new system. I really emphasize dialogue with my teams, and as I've been rolling out our DAM and hosting onboarding sessions and follow-up meetings, I encourage feedback. What workflows are working the best? What could be changed, and what are you having trouble with? I highlighted COVID as a turning point because we're all remote, and DAM adoption has served to mitigate some of the connectivity issues that we'd had prior. Governance again, governance is key. I cannot emphasize that enough. Our DAM committee includes senior leadership, artistic, content production, marketing, communications, and IT. All members have a direct involvement in asset creation, distribution, and storage. The approach that I've taken in rollout is to start with power users and high priority teams. And as asset ingestion and migration is an ongoing process, given the sheer amount of assets we've got, we phase out other systems gradually. There are still instances we encounter where sharing via physical hard drive or via Dropbox is the most efficient method, and that's okay for the time being. With all the changes that we've been implementing internally, I cannot underestimate the importance of documentation. And as a group, our governance committee has been working on an institutional digital preservation policy that aligns with our mission and mandate, as well as asset delivery guidelines for our external audio and video production partners, covering everything from technical specifications to naming conventions and delivery timelines. My work with the orchestra has straddled the realms of archives and digital asset management, areas that are very closely aligned to begin with. And having that forward-looking vision, setting up future you for success, and envisioning the long-term impact of present-day changes is at the heart of our DAM plan. In addition to all of these changes and new processes, there are existing systems that we've been able to integrate to help prop up our DAM mission. We've lovingly nicknamed our DAM DAISY, an acronym for Digital Asset Information System, as well as a nod to the first song programmed to be sung by a computer by IBM in 1961, and then referenced in Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. And to briefly return to the importance of governance, it was actually our VP of Artistic Planning who suggested this in our very first governance meeting when I brought up the fact that DAMs with a nickname have a higher rate of user adoption. So DAISY becomes a link in our chain of established systems. Like many performing arts organizations, we utilize planning and management software for our season programming. A custom API enables DAISY to pull in performance records, creating events to which child assets are related back to, something I'll illustrate in the next slide. These assets, audio, video, ancillary content, inherit descriptive metadata from ArtsVision, including composer, repertoire, artist, location, all through manual workflows. Another manual approval workflow allows select assets to be pushed to our streaming platform, where our web marketing team prepares them for our digital stage audience to view directly through our website. Leveraging existing systems, ArtsVision and Bright Cove in our case, cuts down on duplication and allows our DAM to function within our system stack. Because the majority of our assets are tied directly to events, our DAM partner, SendShare, built a custom search function that enables users to directly search event dates to pull up records and associated assets. For assets that are not directly tied to performances, brand assets, logos, for example, a robust hierarchical keywording structure allows navigation through the user interface. And I've prepared a short demo of how this event search works. In this demo, I'm searching for assets related to our digital stage performance from February 18th, 2021, featuring Florence Price's Piano Concerto in one movement. Entering the date, I'm able to pull up the performance's event record with all of the information from the ArtsVision record viewable on the Overview tab. Navigating to the Media tab, I can access all child assets easily broken down by type. Our All Media widget displays every asset associated, while widgets like Main Audio and Main Video show me all the approved usable content in those areas. Diving deeper into an approved video, you see we've got our marketing copy and description, keywords, composer, and repertoire information, and information that shows us that this asset has been approved for audience access via Bright Cove and has been pushed to that system for our web marketing team to build out the proper distribution. The user feedback I've received has been incredibly positive, and it really increases morale when staff knows exactly what assets they have access to, where to find them, and how they can be used and reused. Our assets showcase the legacy of the Philadelphia sound. And as we move forward, our dam will continue to be tailored to our specific needs, taking into account all of that precious user feedback that lays the groundwork for our road ahead. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you for that summary, Roberta. Makes me so happy.
Me too.
I know you've done such a
Definitely.
great job. You've done an absolutely awesome job. And I just love. I was joking yesterday on one of the sessions that I'm really happy when I become obsolete with a client, you know, because you take it in and it's been fantastic. Please put your questions into the Q&A tab. I'm monitoring that as well. And I'm just going to start with a few questions that I have. So I guess what I'd like to know is that all sounded really great in terms of how well it went, but maybe what were some of your biggest challenges? What were the biggest roadblocks you faced, and how did you deal with those?
So some of the challenges I encountered was just locating assets. As I mentioned before, we had multiple different avenues and storage areas that these assets were being kept. So especially working remotely, getting VPN access to be able to remote into the server and pull assets off, the size of certain assets over maybe not so great internet connection could be a challenge. Also, that sense of tribal knowledge that members of the organization who have been there 20, 25, 30 years might have, that I coming in pretty new might not know. So it took a lot of digging and a lot of interfacing with staff via Zoom, and we had Zoom happy hours and team hangouts and getting to know you, and that was very helpful in bringing me up to speed on where the orchestra was at.
Yeah. And you're one of those people who actually moved for a job during the
Yes.
pandemic and then didn't get to see people in person.
No, I moved 2 months into starting the job. And before that, everybody was like, when are you moving to Philly? And I thought, when are we going back to the office? So,
Yeah. Well,
be determined.
Yeah, I know. And I've been looking at the program. I'm hoping I'll be able to get to some concerts this year when I'm back in Philly.
Absolutely.
Good. So, okay, we've got some questions coming in from the audience, which is great. There's a lot of people on this session, by the way, Roberta, who are from other orchestras. So we've got the
Great.
LA Phil, we've got the New York Phil. This is just like so great. All these wonderful orchestras. So talk about the marketing team's involvement. Someone would like to know who's entering the descriptive copy about the video, and did you have to hire new roles to get all that information in there?
So our marketing team is responsible for writing copy and descriptions of concerts. So they've really taken the lead on that, and all of that information is put into Arts Vision. So we're pulling all of those descriptives from Arts Vision into SendShare. And the marketing team will be, they're one of my high priority teams. And initially, the thought process when we adopted a DAM solution was to have the marketing team really work with an Adobe integration so that all of their assets would live in the DAM, and that would be their workspace. That priority has shifted a little bit just based on the workflows that they've described to me. So marketing team is definitely one of the biggest sources of assets. We produce everything from brochures to mailers, programs, and playbills. So they are one of the highest priorities for me.
Great. You mentioned Arts Vision. There was a specific question that came in even before about the Arts Vision integration, and maybe if you could talk about that a little bit more. And I think this is relevant for sort of any performing arts organization of any kind, wherever your performance data is. How do you tie that in with your digital assets? Maybe share some more details on that.
Sure. So the Arts Vision integration was built out to pull specific fields of information from a specific level of events. Not every single event that's put into Arts Vision is pulled over to the DAM. I think it has to be, level 1 approved actual performance or a tour or chamber concert or something along those lines. So the specifics I would need to look into a little bit deeper, because that was also developed prior to my coming on board. But all of the most important information, which for us is concert date, composer, rep, that all was at the level that needed to be pulled over.
Okay. Yeah, I remember there was another orchestra I was working with long before working with you all. And they had a performing arts database, and somebody came in and said, does it have an API? And they said, oh yeah, his name's Bob. Sort of, it was a human API, which really just meant, someone exporting to a spreadsheet,
Yes.
So, so you actually had you were able to actually do a real integration with API, and that's great. Yeah. Wonderful. Good. Somebody wants to know, did you build that API? It's a custom API, or was it, you're actually using the two from the vendors themselves?
It's a custom API. Our DAM partner, SendShare, works with a third-party developer to build out these APIs. So we were liaising with somebody from Arts Vision as well as somebody from this third-party partner to build this out completely custom for us.
Yeah, good. Well, then at least it works exactly the way you want it, probably. So that's good. Okay. Somebody asked about the hierarchical keywording that you mentioned. Can you talk a bit about that and maybe share some more details of how you implemented it?
Sure. So we have a lot of different areas that our assets live in. We have performance assets, we have marketing assets that may or may not be tied to performances. We have a photographic library, and we have, going back to performance assets, a video clip library and an audio clip library. So these things can get a little messy, as you can imagine. With the hierarchical keywording structure that I built out, I basically took a look at the holistic view of the assets at hand and determined what categories people would be mostly looking for. So we have performance assets, and that structure contains audio, video, photos, and programs. So if you click into any season, you'll see a layout of all of those basically tags that allow for navigation through the DAM, browsing. I really developed that because the search function, while great and serving our needs for if we know a specific date, there wasn't necessarily an out-of-the-box intuitive way of browsing through content. And the keywording structure was the best possible option for that.
Okay, makes sense. Someone seems to have looked up your career history and wants to know, since you used to work for Clinique, apparently.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember, even though I interviewed you, I don't remember.
It's been a while.
I know, it's been a while. This person would like to know, how have your learnings from a totally different industry kind of crossed over into the arts and music? Obviously, totally different industries. How is that adapted?
That's a great question. I think with any digital asset management system, at the core, the priorities are always going to be the same. You want to figure out where your assets are and what they're being used for. So coming from, I worked in CPG and retail, and I also worked in other nonprofits. The goal is always the same. So the content is the variable. And coming at this from my past experiences has really, it's given me a good background to how different industries operate. So for that, I think it's all kind of, they say it's all led me to this point, but it truly has, because I've been in situations where I've seen systems configured in a way that maybe I would have done it differently. So when I came to the orchestra, I really had the opportunity to take a little bit of time, observe what was happening, and think about where my past experiences had led me in terms of, how I want the system to look, how I want it to feel, how I want users to be able to work within it. So that is a great question. And I think that coming into, nonprofit, classical music, orchestral position, I always had an appreciation for the arts and for music. I played the violin as a child, and it's always been something that I've appreciated, and even more so now working within that field, and having that insider information makes it all the more rewarding.
Yeah, awesome, love that. Technical question now. Somebody wants to know if the DAM system can handle multi-track audio. And I know because of all those microphones that are hanging over the stage, all the different instruments, like cue the bassoon, that you're recording them separately. So how are you doing with those?
So with multi-track audio, that's still a work in progress. The DAM is really being used now for finished, final mastered mixes, because those are what we would need to be distributing out to either guest artists or broadcast partners. As far as multi-track audio, those the initial intent for those was for them to live in cold storage, and right now we're going through a process of overhauling our infrastructure, getting our servers up to speed according to best practices across the industry. So the question of whether or not it can handle multi-track, I believe it can, but it's not our intention. That's not our use case for it.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's something that's come up on a lot of the media oriented sessions, is what do you do with the raw stuff?
Yeah.
And I was saying we need to have a conference session just on that, what to do with the raw audio and video, because everybody seems to think that it's something different. It should go into cold storage. It should go. Why not put it in the DAM? So it's all over the map.
Right.
It's your point. You decide what you want, what use cases you want to fill, right?
And that's something that we're working through. As I mentioned, our digital preservation policy, we're addressing those issues and really figuring out the heart of what we want to do with that raw content. So it's definitely at the top of our minds.
Good. There's so many more questions here. So somebody would like to know about the archives. So do you have sort of archival assets that are kind of separate from what's in the DAM? Are you managing the archive there? Is there a separate strategy there?
So as far as our archival assets, they are, we do have archival audio that lives in our DAM. Again, going back to our digital preservation policy, we are trying to figure out what our best approach toward these archival assets is going to be, what they would be used for, whether it's internally or special presentations for patrons and audiences, something like that. So the issue of archives versus present day, active assets, it's something that's for us, with 122 seasons, about to be 122 seasons, these issues are very enmeshed. So it's going to take some discussion and a little bit of work to really figure out what is truly archival and what is something that is still usable in terms of telling our story.
Yeah. Another question about metadata, which is, did you use any metadata standards? Either, obviously, you're pulling in things from Art Vision. You have your hierarchy that you developed. Was there any standards that you used, that you based things on?
Yeah. So the metadata standard that we based our customizations off of was IPTC. If I could go back and do it again, I would probably try to implement something more along the lines of PB Core, something that is more aligned with broadcasting. But for us, it kind of hit the basics that we needed to flesh out for our standard and our schema.
Okay. And then as a follow-up to the career question, this will have to be the last one because we have only 1 minute left. What learnings would you apply from your current experience to other sorts of media industries? Someone would like to know.
Okay, that is a really good question. I think that I've really emphasized communication and documentation, and I think that that's something that can carry over to any industry. When you have these standards and these policies really fleshed out, expanded on by stakeholders and people who are intimately involved in decision-making or production processes, questions out of the equation. going through old workflows and seeing what can be improved on, what can be more streamlined, and then writing that down so that there's not a question. And if there is a question, you can kind of view it in the context of what decision making has been done in the past. So that for me is pretty important.
Awesome. Well, we are out of time. Thank you, Roberta.